Talking of enhancing the missing operators project from the YByte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in, here's a really cool idea. Remember, the whole activity hinges on asking questions around numbers. So we form a mathematical expression and remove the operator which the user must guess. For example, 12-32 is 384. The operator here is multiplication. 12-32-83 is 63. The operators are minus and plus. And we have seen later on, as enhancements, we have seen how we can ask long questions, also questions with different kind of operators. So for example, here I have multiply as well as plus and minus, which are of different precedence. Now, as you know, when I handle operators with different precedence, or I have lots and lots of operators, it gets quite hard because to compute the RHS becomes quite hard. The correct answer. The reason is when I'm dealing with different precedences, I must make sure they're operated in the right order. For example, in case of multiplication, plus and minus, I use all the I first do all the multiplications, which I do, for example, in this loop, and then I do an add and subtract. Now, while this logic is very interesting, we have looked at it in detail in another place. I do encourage you to look at it, but it turns out that there is in fact another approach to generate the right hand side, and that's number one simpler. Number two, it allows for some more features to be developed, as we'll see in the next video. So this is what this video is all about. In this video, I'm going to talk about using the eval statement to compute the right hand side. Like I said, it becomes simpler to do this when we have multiple precedences and we want to do some other things as well. So, well, what is eval statement? Well, the idea really is very simple. I can use the eval statement to compute Python expressions that we are forming as the program is running. So for example, let's say I were to say 10 plus 5. Now that sounds obviously 15. If I were to put that as a string and put it inside eval, it's going to evaluate this 10 plus 5 as a Python string, as a Python statement. So let's just see this in work. For example, let's say I were to do 10 plus 5. Now by itself, it's not going to compute this because that's just a string. But if I were to put this inside an eval, then this statement becomes valid Python statement and it computes the result to be 15. Now I can actually have more interesting statements. For example, I can say 10 plus 5 minus 3 and it will also get computed. So that's basically 12. I can do even more interesting things. For example, times 4. Now notice here I'm using two different precedences, multiplication and addition subtraction. Multiplication has a higher precedence, but that gets taken care of by itself because from the Python's point of view, all I'm trying to do is to compute this expression 10 plus 5 minus 3 times 4. So this is, correctly, it's 3. Now this, you can see it's quite powerful because it's taking care of all the precedences. In fact, just imagine if I were to put a bracket inside this statement, then also it's going to work because it's going to do the bracket first and then the multiplication, then the addition. So basically it's doing 10 plus 5 minus 3 times 4. So it's doing 5 minus 3, which is 2, multiplied by 4, that is 8, and 10 plus 8 is 18. Notice how well this is taking care of the operator precedence, the parentheses, and so on and so forth. How can I make use of this fact inside the missing operators project? Well, the idea is very simple. Remember, the whole project hinges on having a list of numbers and a list of operators, which means that all I really need to do is to form a single string which can describe the operation that I want to perform. For example, in this case, let's say my list of numbers is 10, 20, 30, 40. My list of options plus, minus, multiply, and plus again. What I want to do is 10 plus 20 minus 30 times 40 plus 50. Now, if I can form this as a single string, all I need to do is to say eval this particular string and I am done. I don't have to worry about the precedence and all of that because the eval statement takes care of it. Let's see this working. Question also is, how do I convert this to a string? Well, that's actually quite simple. That's basically almost the same as creating the question for the user where we say number dash, and so on and so forth. Over here, I'm not going to do number plus dash. In fact, I'm just going to look at both the lists because they are my lists of number and operators respectively and create a single string. For the last number, I just have to be very careful because there's nothing else after that. So we just see this happening, let's get to our code here. So while I compute the RHS here, let me just say, okay, let's say another approach to calculating, calculate the RHS. So what I do is that I just create a string, let's say called temp. I let it be an empty string, and I just say, okay, look for kk in range, let's say n numbers. Um, really what I want to do is that I want to just say, okay, look, if kk is less than equal to n numbers minus 2. Now again, don't get confused with this. Kk is going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 to n numbers minus 1. So I'm just looking at all the numbers that are not the last number. For these, I just say temp is equal to temp plus, as a string, to put this number, say list numbers and kk. And I just need to add to this the operator that I'm looking at. So I say string, for example, list ops and say kk. Now, with this done, I need to just scare up. I need to also, give a condition for what happens on the last number. Now, last number, obviously, there's no operator at the end of it. So I just have temp is equal to, say, temp, plus str. Now, I must convert this to string, list of numbers, say, kk. Now, with this done, in fact, my temp string, so we can see the temp string forming. Let's say I put, I just put, say, print, say, temp over here. Like I said, this is actually very, very, very similar to how we are forming this question, except that here we had a dash, and then we had to end the statement a little bit differently. But other than that, here we do not have the dash. We're just forming the expression. And once I'm done with all this, I can just say, for example, say print, say, so I'll just call it, say, RHS1, and RHS1 can be, say, eval of temp. Now, this is super powerful, as you'll see, because all the operator precedence, everything gets taken care of by itself, right? So let's just see this running. I'm going to put an, let's say, input over here, so the code stops. So I have some control on this. Let's say the first one is 12, 32, say, plus. Okay, so let's say whatever. Now it's going to ask me a long question. Notice the way my temp got formed was essentially 43 plus, then 43 plus 61, 43 plus blah 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 blah, until the last string was formed. And it turns out that my, so that's okay. So if I look at my RHS, that's 37. My RHS1 is also 37. Let's try to get an example where we have some multipliers as well. So I say, for example, give me a number, say 32, say plus, say minus minus. Now notice this time around I have some multipliers. My expression that's being formed is 40 plus something, 40 plus 53 times, 53 times 54 minus, and so on and so forth. This is my final expression. I just use the eval statement to compute this 2896, and that's also my RHS that I'm computing. So that's indeed the right value. So much simpler, because I don't have to worry about any lists and so on and so forth. All I need to do is to cast my question as a string. Before I wrap this up, just want to make one point very clear, that notice here I'm using list numbers and list ops, because those were the ones that contain my original numbers and original operators. I hope this was useful. This was clear. Very interesting how we can use the eval statement over here. In fact, a lot of possibilities come up, as we'll see a little bit later in another video. But if you like to learn Python programming this way with fun activities, enhancing them, if that makes you think better, do look at our website www.ybyte.in, because we have tons of such activities for you. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.